from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
New land numbers are out, and what you pay will depend on where you live. Plus, a new drought monitor updates conditions in agribusiness, making bin space with old crop sales.
If you check around in some areas, especially like St. Louis, Kansas City, there's getting to be some pretty good basis bids out there, especially even in wheat and beans.
Ken Ferry tells you how to rescue troubled soybeans, and they shared a video of their bin-busting disaster. Hear the tale in their own words today on In the Country.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. During the commodity boom in 2012 and 2013, farmland values skyrocketed. Now fresh data is out raising questions about the stability of land markets. The report breaks down the numbers into three sections. First, farm real estate, which includes the value of all land and buildings. It was up about 2% compared to 2016. The biggest increases in the Pacific region, while decreases were seen in the northern plains. Second comes cropland values. Overall, cropland values remaining unchanged from last year. However, there was movement. The southern plains saw cropland values increase 6%, while in the drought-stricken northern plains, prices fell. Several of the key Corn Belt states like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Nebraska also seeing cropland values fall in 2017. And third, pastureland prices. Values were up about $20 an acre. Some of the biggest increases in Texas and the Delta regions, while the biggest decreases in pastureland prices were major crop states like Iowa, where pastureland prices fell nearly 9%. Cash rent information also out from USDA for 2017. Nationally, the average cost to rent cropland about $118 per acre. That's about $5 higher than a year ago. States like Iowa and Illinois saw cash rents fall by a few dollars compared to a year ago, while rents went up in places like Indiana and California. The latest U.S. drought monitor showing why we've seen a drop in Iowa crop conditions the past 2 weeks. The monitor now showing 67% of the top corn growing state at some level of abnormal dryness or drought. That's 3 points worse than last week. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says Iowa is the only state in this Midwest map that's showing severe drought. And it covers about 7% of the state. And following a drought-free July east of the Mississippi River, a few counties in southwest Illinois are now in D1 or moderate drought. And the fresh drought monitor also showing roughly 30% on the contiguous United States in some form of drought or dryness. That's a slight improvement from last week and still 20 points better overall compared to last year. One state outside the drought zone is Tennessee. The drought monitor showing it's 100% drought-free, and the crop progress report seems to back that up. 82% of the state's corn and cotton is rated good to excellent, and 72% of soybeans get those high marks. Tyne Morgan joins us from Union City, Tennessee, with a look at crops in that corner of the state. Tyne?
Thanks, Clinton. Yeah, Tennessee's kind of been the bright spot when it comes to crop conditions this year. Each week, we see some strong crop conditions in Tennessee. And here now with Todd Littleton. He farms in Kenton, Tennessee. Todd, overall, how would you describe, let's start off with corn. How would you describe your corn crop this year?
We've got, I'd say, an above average corn crop on our early corn, come out of the ground growing. Had a couple of weeks of cold weather there that kind of slowed things up, but after that, we've come through, had a really nice June, got some timely rains, and everything's shaping up to be good with the corn.
Yeah, and how was temperatures during that key pollination time? We're sitting here, it's August, 80-something degrees. I was expecting 100 degrees. You know, the weather is favorable today. Has it been that way all year?
We had this past 2 weeks have been above average temperatures, but a lot of our first corn is already pollinated and grain filled and come through that time pretty well. So we're optimistic that it's going to be a above average crop.
So overall, what are average yields for you here in Tennessee, and then what do you expect to reach this year?
I would say on average we're 140 to 160 bushel. I'm hoping this year we have some 160 to 175, 80. And then we've got some later corn that's still got a long way to go that may not reach those above average yields.
So when do you expect to harvest? Do you expect to harvest on time or maybe a little bit earlier this year?
We think we'll begin harvest maybe in 3 to 4 weeks. So that's, 1st of September. It's pretty well on time for us.
And real quick, you already harvested your winter wheat crop. yields disappointing or were they surprising this year?
Our yields were surprising given the stress that the crop come through. We had a bad freeze when wheat was jointed that had a lot of guys really concerned that it might have trimmed some yield, but we seem to have come through that pretty good with this year's crop.
Well, Todd, thank you so much. I hope that you have a bountiful harvest. It's everything that you wanted and more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it. Clinton, back to you.
Cindy Clausen joining us now with a broader look across farm country. She has today's crop comments. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Clinton. In Central Texas, Alan Meisner took this picture for Twitter as corn harvest came to an end. He lives in Bartlett, Texas. According to the latest numbers from NASS, about a fifth of the state's corn has been harvested. It's usually only in the single digits. 69% is currently rated good to excellent. And also from Twitter, 7th generation farmer Jeffrey Ruth posted this picture from his cornfields in Rising City, Nebraska. He says the ear difference is the result of this spring's cold, wet weather. Uneven emergence leads to less than stellar fields. Adding to that, Plant 17 continues to haunt them. USDA says 61% of Nebraska corn is considered good to excellent, and just 17% is in the dough stage. That's well behind the 5-year average. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to take a look at your national forecast. But for now, here are some hometown temps.
Visit FarmJournalPro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. FarmJournalPro.com.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about strategies for making bin space and selling old crop corn. That's today's market analysis. And later, we get face-to-face with the makers of this viral video, the story behind the footage today on In the Country. Summer crop harvest just a few weeks away. You might be thinking about bin space. Well, this morning, Tyne Morgan discusses old crop sales for today's analysis.
Here now is Sue Martin. Sue, let's talk corn. I mean, we have a lot of producers we know that are still hanging on to some old crop, not as many marketing opportunities in corn that we've seen in beans. What is your advice for the camp that still has old crop in their hands?
Well, I think that when you've got old crop and you're still holding it and you know you're going to be needing probably the room, I would recommend moving that corn. If you check around in some areas, especially like St. Louis, Kansas City, there's getting to be some pretty good basis bids out there, especially even in wheat and beans. I think beans yesterday was like 18 cents over the board. And today, KC was running on wheat equal to the board. So that's a pretty good, that's interesting too, by the way, because that speaks to the fact that demand's growing and maybe they're starting to shrink a little bit on those sales. But I would recommend getting it moved. And then let's use a break in here in August to buy that back and reown via through options or something like that. The thing about new crop is we're not recommending any new crop hedges, and we haven't. We feel that this is a market that is still trying to, it's a corrective pullback in our view within a much bigger market. And we feel that as this market starts to go, and if these situations of concern over weather continues, all of a sudden you're going to see a much better basis market next year. And therefore, that grain will, if you sell the grain and buy back calls, well, you're not going to get the basis move that we've seen in past years, and even if it came equal to the board or something like that, you won't get to enjoy that. And so it'll be a cash move as much and maybe more than a board move. But there are gaps on the chart that are huge. Deese corn, year in, year out. July corn, year in, year out, and SEP. They are huge gaps going from 548, 560, all the way up to 709. I cannot ever recall a time in history that we've had gaps like that.
Interesting, something to note. Thanks so much, Sue. We appreciate it. Stay with us. We'll have a check of weather right after the break.
Talk markets one-on-one with Sue Martin. Call Ag and Investment Services toll-free at 1-800-527-0051 or visit her website, www.futurescashinfo.com.
Welcome Welcome back to AgDay here with meteorologist Cindy Clausen. Cindy, as we look at the map here, it looks like this front is really the kind of main thing that you're watching as far as creating any weather for us.
Yeah, and that really is the kind of thing. And with that high pressure settling in, we'll have some drier conditions then, at least for parts of the Corn Belt and into the northern plains. But let's take a look at the map, put this into motion for you. And you can really see that it's going to be mainly this system where we see the bulk of the rain, at least in the next 12 to 24 hours, as that continues to move into the eastern part of the country. So along the east coast, the Gulf Coast states as well. Now notice we have a secondary low. We're going to see some shower and thunderstorm activity in parts of the Rockies as well, and that'll start to move into the plain states. Otherwise, high pressure kind of dries things out for a little bit before we see more moisture moving into the plains and parts of the central Corn Belt. The cold front will swing off to the east coast. We're going to see continuation of showers and thunderstorms along there, but notice even as we get into Saturday, we'll start to see a lot more scattered shower and thunderstorm activity in the nation's midsection. Now, over the past 24 hours, most of that rain has been with that low pressure system up around the Great Lakes area and with that trailing cold front, especially around the Gulf Coast. As you add in the next 24 hours, you'll see where that cold front is heading, and that's going to be for much of the eastern half of the country. More heavy rain possible in the southeast, and you start to see it filling in a little bit in parts of the plain states, and that's not a bad thing because we do have some drought conditions that continue to worsen there. All right, as far as temperatures, still cool in the Great Lakes area with high temperatures only in the upper 60s. We still keep it pretty warm though out in the west, where we're still dealing with mid and perhaps even upper 80s, 92 over in Carson City. Now as we head into tonight, the cool air kind of spreads a little bit further to the south and to the east. Low temperatures in the 50s and 60s across the northern tier, 60s and 70s across most of the southern tier. And as we head into tomorrow, not quite as cool for most of the Great Lakes area. We start to see those temperatures getting a little closer to normal and not quite as warm in the northwest as well. But we are looking at a pretty warm day for the southern plains. All right, taking a look at the jet stream, we've got this trough that's been in the Great Lakes. That's going to push on off to the northeast. And what will happen is temperatures kind of start to even out a little bit. They'll still be on the warm side in the west and across much of the south. But for the most part, we start to see a little bit more of a zonal flow developing, especially across the central part of the United States. But overall, those temperatures will kind of even out just a little bit. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Medford, Oregon, sunny and hot today with a high of 106 degrees. Then over into Marshall, Minnesota, mostly sunny and warmer with a high of 75 degrees. And Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, look for scattered showers and thunderstorms with a high of 84.
Do your soybeans need a little help to make it through August? We'll have tips from the field with agronomist Ken Ferry. That's up next. Plus, we talk with the Indiana farm family still trying to clean up after a grain storage disaster. Hear it in their own words today on In the Country.
Deciding whether to sell your old equipment? Well, Machinery Pete's Pick of the Week lets you stay informed on current market prices, allowing you to set the best possible price for your equipment. Text Pete 6 to 31313 to get started.
You know, August is a key month for soybeans. This morning, Ken Ferry and I go over options for rescuing beans if they're under stress. Farm Journal field agronomist Ken Ferry here talking with us in a soybean field, Ken, that's had a little bit of stress to start the year. In fact, we've got weeds, we've got flooding and stunted growth. Is there anything we can do to try to rescue this crop?
Yeah, the first thing we have to think about is where is this crop at? Okay. As far as is our rescue treatment for the weeds going to be going to affect the plant in any way itself. So the first thing you do is would stage the crop itself. And these beans are stunted. They look short and they just look like they don't have much time on their side as far as they've been tough growing. And when we look at them, we can see the immature pods here at the upper portion of the plant. Sure. That tells us that these are at R3. So at R3, they are in a danger zone. If we burn these beans too much, we're going to do one thing. They're barely going to double in size, so they're going to stay short. And at that time, if we burn them right now, we can abort pods, okay, and we can abort some flowers, so we could affect the yield itself. The other thing we have to realize that we might be able to get this one, but we're probably not going to get this one. In this case, we're in a field that's been sprayed twice with Roundup, and we haven't slowed it down. So both of these are, they're Roundup resistant. Sure. So we're going to think about coming in here with something that would have a burning effect, like a diphenyl ether or something to try to bring these back down itself. So it's pretty hard in here to clean this up, without causing some bean damage. But if we let these weeds go, they're going to cause some damage itself. So it kind of gets you caught. Then you have to look in a year like this, where are you at in your label for your cropping restrictions for next year?
Sure.
So you're not using a product, if we are going to burn them, we're not using a product that's going to carry over and ding next year's crop itself. And if they were not Roundup ready, you just say, come in here with your Roundup application, get what you can get, and you probably have to combine the rest and tend to them next year. The fact that you know they're Roundup ready, you're going to have to change that mix. So picking the hybrid here, because of the amount of pressure we got, I would choose to burn these beans to see if I could slow them down or get them out of here. And I would, because we're going to experience a yield hit here if we don't.
Sure.
But there's a lot of decisions within it. If we go back 10 days ago, we could make that application with a lot less likely to cause a ding. But like everybody else, farmers up against it can't get into the field and spray. This is going to cause some problems for the crop that's growing. Definitely going to create a lot of seed for next year as far as the actual weed itself goes.
Next, we visit with the Indiana farmers who are coping with the loss of their grain elevator with harvest just 4 weeks away.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Cleanup continues today at a farm in southwest Indiana where a grain bin and hopper toppled over in spectacular fashion. Perhaps you've seen this footage. Plenty of people have. It's had more than 11 million hits since it was first posted on Monday. We visited the White Farms as they try to recover from the explosion in their newfound fame. 84-year-old Bill White and son Steve are resting a spell. They've earned it. They've been clearing debris and trying to move grain from the now fractured elevator. Late Monday morning, as they were moving grain in advance of this year's harvest, they first noticed something was wrong.
And I was uploading the truck and bolts started popping and flying, and we went ahead and loaded the truck and pulled it out, and then we come out here and seen it was a leaning.
When I seen the bolts start popping out this side, I knew it was going to go over there.
Get back, Dad! Get back, Grandpa! Get back! Get back!
So what did that tell you when bolts are starting to pop out?
Things have begun to happen.
With the bin and hopper leaning, they tried to empty some grain to ease the load, but there wasn't enough time. And with bolts popping and metal creaking, it was just a matter of time.
There it goes. Yeah!
That's the heat off that thing. I can't even describe the heat. It was overwhelming.
But when the flame come out, it got pretty close to us out there.
So that got your attention when it...
Yeah, because I really thought it was going to have a fire then, but it was one flash and it was over.
I've been a volunteer firefighter for 20 years, and I'd never seen an explosion like that.
Now Bill, Steve, and the boys are going through the rubble, happy to be alive and amazed by what they've discovered in the wreckage.
The corn was 12 foot deep. We had a straight truck sitting in that building when that blast hit. It actually shoved that truck off the concrete 4 or 5 feet. It had 4 or 5 feet of corn actually under that truck. That was amazing.
For Bill, this was his second close call, having been trapped in a bin 2 years ago. But he takes it in stride with his signature smile.
I got caught in this grain bin here a few years ago. And but they rescued me. They knowed what to do and how to do it and got me out of there. So I've had a lot of and lived so far to tell about it.
There we go.
Now, Steve says the bin and hopper were only 5 years old. They're not sure what failed, but engineers are looking into it. He says harvest would have started at the end of August, but until they can get repairs made, he expects they'll be the last farmers in the field. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. But before we go, we'd like to wish our own Betsy Gibbon good luck and blessings on her big day. Betsy's getting married this weekend in South Dakota. We wish the newlyweds all the best. From our family to yours, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.